Hello, 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 Logic community. Welcome to Logic Live. Thanks for tuning in. There's something terribly wrong with this music. It is way too loud for my headphones, but I'm going to see if I can put up with it. Hello. It's pretty cool to have a change of pace here, music-wise. I hope everyone's having a great day. It's a little chilly, but you know what? Compared to the last couple of days, it's certainly not too bad. It's wonderful to see all you wonderful faces here in the chat. Hello, Sybil. Hello, Michael Landon. Hello, Randy. Josh is in the chat. That's a familiar name. David Kreitz. Austin Campbell. Hello. Carlos Campos. Oh, man, what a wonderful bunch of people we have here. One thing I know about this music is that it ends very early. Oh, my God, I'm not used to that. Holy geez. Hello. Welcome to Logic Live. Welcome to some new music here. That was fast. Oh, I'm used to 3 minutes. 1 minute. Oh man, we gotta loop that guy. But hello everyone. Welcome. We have an incredible show here today on Logic Live. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Jeff Kyle. I will be your host for this fine day. And before we get started, I am going to share with you some updates and some messages from our sponsors. Here it is. This episode of Logic Live is brought to you by AJA, together with Flame since 2006. Hot Spring, the newest sponsor of Logic Live. They are the future of VFX outsourcing, connecting you to other artists from around the world to help you get your projects done. You can find them at thehotspring.com. And if you need Boris FX plugins, you can save 15% on any Boris FX product, standalone or subscription, with the code Logic-2022 at checkout. Not bad. I'm a big Boris FX fan, and I support this message. The Logic merch store is where you can find the best merch Logic has to offer. It wouldn't be Logic Live if I didn't say, look your best while you make your best, because the quality of this community knows no bounds. You can find the merch store on the Logic TV website after you click on the merch button at the top of the page. Thank you to all of the patrons who are subscribed on Patreon. Your support is what allows this right here to take place and what allows the Logic community to thrive and grow. We are up to, look at that number, 152 patrons as of this week. The list just keeps growing. Thank you to each and every one of you. If you'd like to support what we're doing here on Logic, you can get yourself some exclusive content, such as the post-show Q&A, where, for instance, after the show, we'll be heading on over to Zoom, chat some more with Josh about all things publishing and some things that we really just didn't have time to cover during the body of the show. Head on over to patreon.com/LogicTV and support for as little as $5 a month. The Logic Forum is a wonderful place full of amazing questions and conversations about all things Flame, and every week it is growing. Our year-to-date forum stats for 2023 are looking good so far. We're at 1,264 users, 8 more than last week. 212,000 page views, 44,000 more than last week. That's a lot. 1,300 posts, which is 300 more than last week. And finally, 610 users on Discord, which is a humble 4 more than last week. On the subject of Discord, of course, if you haven't already signed up, why don't you join me on over there? That's where you'll find your day-to-day Flame chats, questions, comments, concerns. It's a little more conversational than the forums, and it's a great way to get a sanity check on a keyboard shortcut or a quick confirmation about a workflow that you're working on. Great place to be. Click the Discord link at forum.logic.tv and come on over. Another week, another challenge coin shipment. If you are the proud new owner of a challenge coin, it's always fun to share a picture of your proud new desk ornament. These things are huge and they are super cool. This week I found myself showing it off to our nuke team, actually, over here at Assembly. Someone brought up combustion and I said to myself, wait a minute, I think that my challenge coin has that logo on the back. And sure enough, I held it up to the camera and someone recognized the combustion logo as part of the suite of logos on the back of that awesome coin. These are great. And while we're talking about great things, how about Glenn Teal? If you haven't heard, Flame artist Glenn Teal has been helping the world of Logic by producing the Logic podcasts. He's been doing an amazing job getting those underway. It feels like it's once a day, but I think it's like once a week. They're coming out left and right, and we'll be releasing new episodes all the time. But if anyone has any suggestions for podcast topics or interview subjects, shoot a message over to Glenn on the forum, username up on the screen, Glenn Teal. Reach out if you have any ideas on someone to interview, and there's a solid chance Glenn will make it happen. My esteemed coworker, Austin Campbell, who I believe is in the chat here, has made it into the intro slide here on Logic. Congratulations. And he's teamed up with Randy and Andy to produce a number of YouTube short videos covering topics like explaining what a flame artist is to someone who hasn't heard of it. He's putting a great spin on it, on what could be argued as a side of the Logic community and Flame community as a whole that hasn't really been touched, which is reaching out to the larger post-production world as a whole, and reaching out to younger audiences. So awesome work to Austin. If you happen to see this YouTube short, don't forget to press that smash that like button. I'm sorry. And speaking of content, let's talk about Logic Academy. We have some exciting new classes to start out the year here in 2023. Starting out with a continuation of Sinan Viral's Flame Particle System, this time part 2. I find just the little sampling of clips here in this preview to be absolutely mesmerizing. Just look at that. Clearly he goes into some great detail showing some of the amazing specific use cases, including things like this cool rainbow thing, the school of fish, and what is that? The rig here for the bird, the flock of birds. Unbelievable. Amazing stuff. So take a look at Particle System Part 2. This is joined with new tutorial number 2 by Graziella Gandolfi, covering an intro to Matchbox shaders. If you've been following Logic the last few weeks, you'll remember I hosted Grazi, where she walked us through the process of writing your first Matchbox shader. This is the tutorial counterpart to that episode, where Grazi walks us through step by step exactly how she writes a simple Matchbox shader and talks you through some of the complicated theoretical concepts so you can understand what's going on and why. Does an excellent job making it clear, really spelling out the why behind some of this stuff, which I always love. So thank you very much for this, Grazi. These 2 new videos join the rest of the series: Connect, Conform, Image Node, Intro to NDI, 8-minute aces, Beauty Techniques in Flame, Setting up PyBox, the Machine Learning Time Warp, My First Linux Flame, the Logic Portal, the Flame Particle System Part 1, all available for free on the Logic YouTube channel. Big shout out and thank you to Autodesk for sponsoring these videos. And of course, as we covered about a month ago, Flame 2023.3 has become available for download. So don't forget to upgrade if your schedule allows it, to take advantage of some of the new features. I think it's the animation editor and batch effects bug fixes and so much more. So upgrade if you can. And that does it for the slideshow. That's, not bad. We got through that pretty quickly, didn't we? I'm getting good. So hello. Thank you for being here, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My wonderful guest I've been working with for the last 10 months. He's a wonderful person, and he knows his stuff. His name, of course, you've seen before. He's a wonderful member of the Logic community. He's active all the time, and he sure knows his stuff about today's subject, which is publishing. Welcome, Josh Laurence. Hello, and happy Sunday.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you here, and I think maybe I'll start us off. First of all, thank you for being here. I'll start us off with a quick overview question, hopefully a low-hanging fruit, and it's, you have become something of a publishing guy. You're like the face of publishing almost, and I know that it's not necessarily that you discovered publishing, and it's not necessarily that you rubbed some rock somewhere and you were gifted with all of the knowledge of publishing. So maybe for the guests at home, share a little bit about how you became the authority on publishing here.
Well, I'm not the authority on publishing. There's actually a couple guys out there that really know this stuff as well, if not better, and do things that I don't know how to do in it. But this whole thing came about in about 2015. I was working at a company called Gloss, and we had a machine that was not connected to our SAN, and we had a Resolve machine, and we had a project that that came in to the company, and it required a ton of artists, and we were trying to figure out how to get setups and rendered shots to and from artists, and tracking all the work and reviewing all the work, and it just became kind of slow getting things through the door, and it seemed like that was the norm at most places that the freelancers we had hired had encountered, that it was, you needed to wait for things to wire over from one machine to another, and you had a lead artist with a host trying to organize everything. And so, somebody said, well, why don't you try the publishing? And when we discovered it, we had probably about a month downtime after this massive job, and we spent a good amount of time. Dorina Dorley and I were figuring out what was working, what wasn't, and we came up with recipes to start publishing things. And as soon as we did, it absolutely eliminated all that extra time. The material was rendered directly to a host machine, and the work showed up in the timelines already conformed, and everybody had control over the versioning of what they were doing, and you could see from each artist all the stuff that they were working on in real time, and we could actually implement sweatboxing in the company where we could all look at stuff together, and it was very, very quick, and there was no waiting for things to show up in a master timeline or in a conform or in multiple conforms. So that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah, and as a flame artist who has certainly spent some time working the non-publishing way before I met you, it can be a mess, especially at crunch time at the very end of a job. It's
Yeah.
so easy to lose track of what is where and where the latest version is. It's just a complete nightmare. And so, over the last, as I mentioned, 10 months, it's been a pleasure to really change my life on the way that I work in Flame. And as we alluded to, this is essentially part two to the first publishing episode that Josh covered. So we're potentially going to be kind of cruising through some of the stuff, but that you might need to get started from the very beginning. But that video is available to consult and to look at. So maybe we should, if you're ready, jump right into these kind of part two to what you know as the publishing workflow, some of the advancements that you've made in the last couple months, and
Yeah,
where
a lot
publishing
of
is
it with
now
your
for you.
help. Yeah, and then with your input too. And so this is absolutely something that having Jeff to work with has been a real pleasure, because he's been open to absolutely changing everything about the way he's worked, and it's made it really fun. And he's pointed out some things that are good. But one thing that we covered in the last one was we just did a single line conform, which was, even if we had multiple layers in the conform, we spread it all out on one timeline in order to publish everything. And that was kind of the easy way to do it, at least to getting you involved. But Michael Landon asked me a few questions about things like, can you only publish a few shots? Do you have to publish everything? And the answer is yes. You can absolutely just publish one or two shots if you need to do that, or if you need to save space, especially if you're not working on the majority of the shots. One of the things about publishing that I talked to him about was that it was a way to take camera footage or footage from a client that's in multiple sources and homogenize it within Flame, but not inside of a stone. You would have it on a shared piece of storage, like a SAN, which is what we had at Gloss and kind of what we had at Assembly. Excuse me. So the idea here is that we're going to look at multi-layer conforms, and we're going to look at integrating all those things into one batch, so that you can work on it with multiple elements that come from a timeline. So let's get started.
Let's get started.
Yeah. So I've got a 30-second clip. Here's the hypothetical. I've got a 30-second spot or video that's coming from a client, and they want to conform it, and they want to do work on two of the shots in there. And so they've given me an XML and the sources and a reference file. And I created a real group up on my desktop. And in there, I've got my reference file, and the reference looks like more NASA footage. And this is kind of what the spot's going to be, and it's about the moon. Okay, great.
And I think, just to interject, I think it's important to note that this is Josh is going to show off here in this first part. This is essentially the long form workflow, but basically a workflow that involves one timeline. So obviously that's typical for long form, but it's also good if you have like one spot that you're working on in a conform. You don't have to worry about too many other spots, and that's what he's going to cover now.
Yes, so we're going to cover that to begin with, but when we're done covering the odds and ends in this one, we're going to cover a multi-spot with a connected conform. So we're going to get to that after we do this one. We're going to do one with 4 spots, a 30, a 15, and 2 6s, and see how to do that with the connected conform itself and the publishing. So we'll get to that one after this. you can see where I'm going with that. That's these right here. So this is the XML that I've gotten from my client who is an editor in Premiere. And the first thing I do is I use this XML prep because I know it's coming from Premiere, and that's from Ted Stanley and Mike Vaglianti and John Gearing. And I'll fix the XML, which does a nice thing with all the timing. And then I close it, and I take this and I bring it in to my sequences.
Yeah. By the way, such a simple maneuver there with just pressing one button. But if you've ever had some grievances, and this is a seasoned flame artist talking here, two of them, we've all seen the nightmare that is XMLs from Premiere. And and maybe you don't know that this is a problem, but if you've ever noticed that the XML doesn't quite line up with the reference, that things are one frame off here, and then as you go further, it's 2 frames off there, this Python script will fix it. So if you take anything away, please take that away.
And we've confirmed it fixed it with this. It's really great. The other thing from John Gearing that I use is this UC renamer. And I go in here and I'll strip out the end of that. And what I get is a properly named sequence. And I love this. That's actually something I use all the time. So you can see I've got, this all here. I definitely want to put my reference QuickTime in here. So I'll add a track below, and I'll patch this. Sorry, let's open this up because I turned it off. Let's set my patching. Okay, and we'll have that in there. And this is the, you can see in the secondary layer, you can see the cut points are where they're supposed to be. And so we've got this here. I kind of want to integrate this QuickTime reference into what I'm going to publish. So I'm going to want to put it together up in the same video layer, at least temporarily. So I'm going to take these cuts and I'm going to copy the transitions to the QuickTime reference. Oh, but you know what? I forgot something. I need to rename the source as, and this is something that we do in assembly, or when I was at assembly, we use qtref. And that makes a source that you can publish. Now, it's very important when you're doing multi-layer publishes that your base layer, your background that you want to use for any of the compositing is on your very first layer here. So because the QuickTime ref is not going to be on the what I want to ultimately write back out to, I'm going to put that on the second layer there. And going forward, I know that, I've got this right here, and this right here. And oops, I remember the client gave me a markup. And so I'm going to try to integrate markups into, they gave me this markup here. So I'm going to set my in-out point here, and I'm going to add a track there, and I'm just going to overwrite into there so that my markup is on another layer in the timeline. And I know that because I've got this comp right here, right here, that we're going to have a markup in there as well. And I add the markup, add the earth, and match the color there. So we'll put that in there, right? And now I have my markup and my QuickTime reference and my two pieces here, which I still have to conform. So I go to the conform, and I will search the location where I know the footage is going to be, and I'll scan it. And I'm just skimming pretty quickly here. My match criteria for these is the file name and the source timecode, because it's MP4s and they come from everywhere in all different resolutions. So I'm going to close that. That's correct. And I'll link the sources, and everything pops in, right? And so
that's how it always works in production. Everything always links right away.
Well, in the name of time. So in the sequence here, I now have the source footage the reference footage and a layer for markup, right? And I've got that markup, the reference footage, and the footage to comp, and down here. So let's actually DX between, let's set that as the secondary track, and I'll DX footage, and I'll see, oh, what do we got? Now, one is bigger than the other, so this right here looks like it's an action, right? That's not correct, so I'll set this resize. Let's DX it, and we'll, okay, good, that's correct. And then this, wow, this is weird. So there's like an aspect ratio weirdness here. And you think, well, that's not what it's supposed to be. And maybe it's because this is 133 footage and that's a 178 timeline. The thing I like to do is I just copy the action and then I paste it on top of itself. That fixes the aspect ratio. So I'll undo.
Great tip, by the way. That blew my mind when I first saw it. So that's a good
one. Yeah, it's a really good one. And then we can continue DXing here. So this is time warp. And I also, when I do time warps for whatever jobs I'm bringing in, I usually take off the speed because the speed changes calculate so differently between different applications that it becomes, really trouble to rely on the speed. And especially if there are speed changes in there, you don't want to do that. Okay, so this is
good catch on the auto key, by the way. We have our first question of the day from our friend Randy McEntee, actually, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Randy wants the viewers at home to know if you could explain what DX means.
Oh, yeah. DX means difference. So what I do here is I will show you. I work when I'm conforming with the viewing settings on. And it's you have different modes that you can use to compare what you're working on. The compare off is just showing what's on the P for primary, and the S is your secondary, and that's what it's referencing against. So you can hit your secondary track or your primary track, and these aren't completely lined up, but they're good enough for this demo. You can do a side-by-side, you can do vertical split, and this takes, you can see there's just a little bit, but it creates this split here. But I use difference, and almost everything that I do runs through a difference mode, and that's the best way to check what you're working on. If you hit F13, that's your primary. F14 is your secondary, and if your keyboard works, F15 is whatever mode you've got highlighted here.
Touchy subject. Mine doesn't work. And then I think I've seen a lot of people use some. I'm with you on this one. Difference is my bread and butter, but I've seen a lot of people use blend as well, which I can't seem to get behind. But I know that it works for a lot of people. So
blend is good when you've got things that are radically different, and then you can see the difference. But for me, it's very difficult to differentiate that stuff. So difference. That's what I use, and I go back and forth on the primary and the secondary, and then hit F15. So then these look good, and this looks that, and then you've got something weird going on here, and then there, and that's my graphic, which is on top of this footage here, and this footage looks like it's slipped a bit. I will hold down the Alt key and click on the speed, and that takes care of getting rid of the keyframe that's in the speed that came in from Premiere. And I will get this to DX. I'll line up the first frame, and I will line up the last frame, and then some of these speed changes, you'll see it flicker back and forth. And the thing to tell clients when that happens is it's because the math is different as to how it interpolates frame between different machines. So a lot of you already know that, but that's a good thing to understand. Okay, so this is great. So now we want to publish, okay?
Before you publish, Josh, if you don't mind, Renee has question number 2, and I felt the exact same way as you, Renee, when he showed that to me for the first time. She's
Oh,
asking what the hotkey you use to overwrite into the container above on layer 4. The key there is
yeah.
overwrite. Overwrite should help explain that.
Um, so I started. I'm Flame isn't my first program to do this stuff, and when you use 3 and 4 point editing, like Avid used to be many years ago, or like CMX, the thing to do is you have a source and you have a record, and your record is your destination. So from your source, I'm setting from the in the destination. What I'm doing is here. I'll throw this away and I'll show you. I'm selecting this. I'm hitting the quote key, and that sets your in and out point, right? And this is point number 1 and point number 2. And then I will go to the markup, and that is a single frame. So that's point number 3. There's a 3 point edit. And then I will hit O for overwrite. And because this is on V1.1, this thing is green. When you go to track patching, I've assigned that to V11. I could send this V11 to this layer here, but what I'm doing is I'm telling it where I want to overwrite. In, out, my source, what I'm going to overwrite, and then O. And O just drops the entire PNG in the length from beginning to end in your in-out points. And that's a really good one. I do that all the time for whatever, when I have a graphic in like a really big conform and the graphic is changing because it's different languages, or it's a different, you've got the same time setup and you've copied your footage from 9:16 to 16:9. I'll just hit O, and then you see that as you drop that in, it drops it there and it puts it right to the next one. If I'm in a timeline, it just goes to the next one and the next one and the next one. And it's a really fast way to like pop those in.
Yeah, for me, the
Oh,
key
sorry.
that does the in and
Yeah.
out points was the key. The key for
I'm
me
looking.
because, yeah.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, for me, the key to make this workflow work of the overwrite was that one key that you pressed to set the in and out points for your selection. Because I thought that you had to manually set the in and out points, and I thought it was like, oh, this is a deal. Like, why would I ever want to do that? That's so manual. But yeah, that's a good one.
And I'm watching the chat, and John is right. These are flame hotkeys, not smoke. Sorry, I learned on flame.
But I
Okay,
think we
so
interrupted when you were about to publish, so let's get to
I was
that.
about to publish. Okay, sorry. Renaming. Okay, so this is kind of key when you want to do a publish, and we talked about this a little bit the first time. What we used to do is drag this all onto one layer and then rename it so they all got unique shot names. And that's crucial for the publish workflow, is that everything has to be unique because you're sending data as a single shot. It has to know that whatever you're working on is discrete. Those shots are discrete by themselves. And the way you do that is with a shot name. But if we go here and we use the old, we'll just start with the new one. I've got a preset here. Here, I'll go back and show you my presets. So in my preferences in timeline, I've got a default shot name, and I use project nickname, then the shot number, then SH0, then the background segment, 2 hashes, a caret, and a 0. What does that mean? When I set up all my projects, regardless of whether I think I'm going to be publishing or not, I'll add a nickname. This is really important because if you've got multiple projects going at the same time, the project nickname appended to the shot name is a way for you to tell the difference between shot 10 from project 2302 and shot 10 from project 7505. And it's a great way when you look at the metadata coming in, or somebody looks at it on the sand, they can say all those shots are going with that job. And so that's why I always add the nickname in here. I think I touched on that before. So when I select these, and I Command A, select all, and I rename, Command A, and rename shot, and it brings the project nickname token in there, underscore SH for shot, 0, so that there's always room at the beginning to add something, and then background segment. So before we said segment, not background segment, and segment is the segment index, right? So every shot in order, Flame says the first shot is index 1, the second shot is index 2, and we can look at that in the conform tab. If you turn this off, you see the segment numbers right here. These are the index numbers. So segment 1, that's on track 4, 1.4. This is segment 1 on track 1.2, right? And so if you had named these as segment instead of background segment, I'll show you what that does. We'll go to the timeline, select all, and then right click and rename shot. If I made these segment, right, that's shot 10, project name, shot 10, etc. You'll see this one's shot 10 because it's the first shot on layer 4. That's shot 40 because it's the first shot on layer 3. It's the fourth shot on layer 3. And this one, shift equals, zooms it to the shot, gets you to shot 40. So shot 40, shot 40, shot 10, which is not what I want because that isn't going to go into the shot 40 folder. And if I only had 3 shots there and I renamed the shots, rename shot, and that's in the segment, you'll see this will be shot 30, right here. That's shot 10, and this is shot 40. And all 3 of these shots are going to go to different folders. And they won't show up in the same batch group. And that's not what you want. You want this to be based on the background segment. So you want these 2 up here to inherit the index number from the background segment. Okay? So I'm going to replace, put that shot back. Okay? And then we're going to select all and rename shot. And instead of segment, I'm going to use the background segment token. And you can find all these here, but I'm kind of in the habit of typing these because it's a way for me to remember what the tokens are supposed to be. Great. Now we have background 40, 40, and ta-da, 40. Okay, great. So that's a way to make sure that all the names are homogenized. Now, we don't want to publish everything. Okay, how are we going to do that? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to select all of these shots, and we're going to right click here, and we're going to hide the segments. If you lock them, they still get published. At least last time I checked. But I know that if I hide them, they don't get published. I'm going to select these 3, and I'm going to show those. And I'm going to select these right here, and I'm going to show those. Okay. So I know these shots and these shots we're going to publish. So let's go to the Media Hub, and I will go to my Publish folder. So I want to delete that one. That's my demo.
The build-up was big here because we are 33 minutes in, and we are now finally, after great anticipation,
publishing. I know. Okay, here you go. I'm just dragging it in, but you can also just export. And I have sequence publish, and I have some recipes that I've built. And for the recipe explanations, we can go to the old version of what this is, but I'll hover on this frame so you can, if you're watching it time delayed, you can see what is going on here. And we'll look at the video options, and you can see what's going on here. And we'll go to the clip options, and you can pause and see what's going on here. Okay. And then we'll export.
And it's a quick export because it's just 2 shots.
It's just 2 shots, yeah. It's just what we're going to work on. And there you go. So what you always get when you publish is this right here, which is the publish timeline. And some people save it, some people don't. What you're looking at here is these shots in the first layer, V11. These are your segment clips, and they refer back to and have the metadata from your sources. These right here are your open clips. They're technically both open clips, but these are your open clips that you're going to be using in your timeline. And so what I do is I usually just copy these here, and I go back to my source right here, and I go up a layer and add another track, and I paste them, and they drop right in. So that's shot 40 and shot 80. And what I also do with the recipe that I just showed you is I'll send the name into the desktops, and then I'll have the raw batch groups here. And I usually work a desktop per shot, but working with Jeff kind of weaned me away from that a little bit. What we get here is actually, if we're not working with 50 artists, it's a way for us to look at this. And you see in the publish, we've got the shot to comp, the QuickTime Ref, because we renamed the source QuickTime Ref, and we have the markup right here in the thing. And at this point, I'm expecting Andy's music because it's so amazing. And then basically,
the crowd is going wild. I do have the power. I just don't use it very often.
I know you don't. I know you're. It's a different sensibility. Okay,
that
so
is
we're
fantastic. That it's like the ability to get this all in there with very little setup is wonderful, especially if it's like, we did 2 shots. If it's 20 shots, it's just as quick.
Yeah, and if you have a shot of, like, if you're doing a film, and you've got 800 shots in a timeline, and you're really only supposed to be working on 60 of them. You have those, and you just publish those 60. That's a great way to get this stuff sorted.
Yeah.
It's
and I think what's worth mentioning is, and we're probably not going to show it here, but I can just talk through it. It's the act of publishing additional stuff is the simple act of unhiding it and hit and publish once more, and that's a very simple action right there.
Yeah, that's absolutely the way to go. So I'm going to quickly.
Michael Landon likes how you're publishing the ref into the batch group. And okay. Yes, Renee had a question that I can kind of answer while you're working through here. Renee's asking if, clarifying that publish created a batch group. That's it's one of the checkboxes in the publish recipe to be able to actually create batch groups, and you can choose where those batch groups go. In this case, Josh pointed them to somewhere in his library called raw batch groups, and it created what we just saw here, the starting point batch groups. And I think by default they start out with a resize and a mux node that you can probably just delete because it's not really useful, but they all come with that.
Yes, and I always get rid of that because it's resized to the resize is based on the timeline that you published from. And even though you're not baking in the timeline effects, you're using the source res footage and dropping it back in the timeline. I always get rid of that resize, and I get rid of the mux because the mux is supposed to be some type of caching, but because I'm publishing to my stone to begin with outside of Flame, I don't really need that either. So here we are, and that's that, and we'll write that real quick.
That was a quick comp.
Oh my goodness. You know what? It's added. What's nice also is I use there's a Python script to add the thing back in. I use that all the time. It's amazing. I forgot to change the color on this. So quickly, I will take this and I will look at the back, and I will highlight that as my black level, and front, and I'll highlight that as my black level, and then I will quickly match, right? Okay. And that adds a curve in the blue layers, and we'll exit there. Oh, that's terrible. That's exactly what we don't want. So I'll hold down the Alt key, and I'll do that way, and we'll do something different. let's actually make this. Select the axis, and we will scale it up just a bit. Okay. And then render that. And that's how you render version 2. You just pop it
Yeah.
in.
Oh, great point and great distinction. That the way that your recipe is created, it's not using iterations. It's using it's following the well, it's a custom iteration, and every time you hit render, it makes a new version.
Yes,
That's an important
that's
distinction.
this right here. So I don't iterate. And one of the reasons I don't iterate is because when I render and what I save the metadata goes back into the project. And when I render, there is a batch group that's tied to this render. And if I go here, if I have the open clip and let's say we go here and if I import the open clip, and I think you guys saw me do this before. Actually, let's go to, I always keep
Oh, I think because when you made that, you might have still called them output clips. If
yes,
you might have a Python script where you can just click on the write node in the batch and then import the open clip just from there.
I
Oh,
might,
you found it. You found it.
but I'm going to bring this in because I want to make sure that I got the right one. And this is the open clip here, and you can tell the difference between that is because this right here is the name, the file name 2302.080 v2 in the file name, but this one is not. This is the open clip because it's the 2302.80 and then in brackets VO2, and that's how you know that it's the open clip. And then what I do here is I'll go there and I'll just append the batch. And the batch right here is saved as a group file. I can ungroup and all that stuff is there. We'll just leave that as a
Yeah,
group.
that's a great workflow. I think you showcased the last round as well. We have
Yep.
another question from Nick Smith. He's asking if there's any need to save the batch at all. And I think to clarify, maybe Nick can clarify for me, but my interpretation of that is there any need to save the batch maybe in the project? I think is maybe the question.
So the way that I do that is before working with Jeff, we used to save a desktop per shot. But now when you save the desktop, it's the let's call it the multi-track 30, right? And I'll put the desktop is I'll name it DT multi-track 30, and that will be in my desktops. And the project is saved, and that's it. And if I wanted to just check and make sure that this batch group is actually saved, it's here in the work. You'll see that it's saved in the metadata folder, right?
And again, this is based on the formula that Josh created. So yours might be different if you name it differently, but Josh has named it metadata and then batches.
Right. And this is batch 2, 1, and 0. And they're all there. And I can just load those up if I needed, but they're saved outside. And they can be managed by your IT department. And if you're your IT department, you can just make your backups there. That's how you save the batch groups. And what's nice is that they're tied together. In the metadata of the output clip itself is a link to the footage and a link to the batch group. And the two are tied through that open clip. And it's a really great way to work.
And Nick, hopefully we'll be able to show this a little bit later. I think time is ticking, and I'm hoping we can get through everything. But a fun thing to know is that the answer, what you're alluding at, Nick, is that the answer is yes. If you were to just delete all of your batches from your Flame project here, the batches are still saved on the file system, and they're perfectly accessible. We're going to show you a cool way to pull out your batches so that you could work in a way where you actually don't save any of your batches on your desktop. And there's some thought behind that, and I guess I'll allude to it now. It's the idea of making sure that you have the latest version. If you're working with 10 different artists and you're concerned about not having the latest version, that is a concern about what batch you have might not be the latest batch. And that's something that we'll try to cover later.
Okay, so I think you guys can see what's going on here with the multi-track with this one spot. But let's move on to the next scenario, which is the campaign, right? And so I'm going to clear this desktop, and I'm going to add my campaign reels. Okay, and Not sure what state this demo is. It might actually be conformed. Okay, so basically what I had here, and I will run because you guys don't need to watch me conform all over again. I have 4 spots, right? And in the 4 spots, I had 4 XMLs, and I made the XML prep all at once, which this thing's amazing. It just did them all at once like that. I brought them all in and renamed those timelines as each of these, right? 30, the 15, a 6. Open that. That's a 6, and that's 6B, and this is 6A. So there's 4 spots here. And we'll open that at the back end. And I made a sources sequence. Actually, what do you think, Jeff? Should we redo the sources sequence process? Let's do that real quick.
Redo as in explain it?
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna delete this sources sequence because I don't have anything. I'm gonna get rid of this, and you know what? We'll just do this really quick. I'm gonna take these. I have it saved. I'm going to grab these 4, and I'm going to put them in here. You can see that. And then I'll trim the extra description off of there. I know that it's 22 characters. Remove suffix, 22 characters. I can remove stuff from the front and change it with a new prefix. This is
Love
actually
that script.
I love it. It's
It's
fantastic.
great. I got to get used to it. It's a good idea. It's a good habit.
Oh yeah, it's terrific. And if I wanted to append all these and call these UC renamers, I'm going to add amazing, right? Well, I won't put the exclamation mark. So they're all amazing, right? Or I can UC renamers, renamer UI, just take that all off. That's 7 characters. Great. Okay. Just like that. Anyway, so in the timeline, you see I've got all this and my 15, my 30, my 6. So I know that in the 30, there's some time warps. And if I look here, you see right here, this one there, it says 8,832 handles. This is a massive, massive source. I know that for sure. And I can see with some of these others that it has a time warp. And one of the ways that time warps are always sticky in Flame, especially when you're publishing, because sometimes you get like these time warps, like this one is 600%, which means that you're working with 6 times the number of frames. And if you don't need to, you don't want to. Or if you don't want to, you don't need to. Sorry, I had that backwards. The way that I identify these when I'm planning the conform, before I do anything, I will check. I will use this function right here, which is a search. It's like a way to identify clips in your timeline. You can select any of these options, and it becomes like a way to find stuff quickly in your timeline based on a bunch of criteria. So I'm going to say any segments that include the time warp timeline effect. And I'm going to select that on all tracks, and I'll see what these are. Okay. And once it's all selected like this, the first thing I do is I quickly change the color on it. Any color, doesn't matter, but it's just a way for you just to go back to these, because as soon as you make a selection, your whole selection goes away. So this is 125%. This is 125%. This is a reverse, right? Negative 100%. I'm looking right here. Sorry, I was clicking enthusiastically. I'm looking right here. This one is 600, and that's 400. And what's a mess is that they're using the same source. So that's going to come in. And I need these two to be different, right? So that's going to be 250%, and that's 125%. And I think the 250% is because of a 30 to 24 change, right? So I'm going to go here to the very beginning, and I'm going to add a video track, and this is the 30. I'm going to patch this as track 1, and I'm going to select my 30 and hit go.
That was for Renee.
And there you go. There's my 15 video. Move this down here. Select the 1506 video track. Move that down there. That's 6B, O, 6A. Video
We'll say
track.
what we're not covering is that this implies that the references are trimmed to the proper length.
Yes, that the
trim
references
the
came
reference.
out from the same timeline from Premiere, which you're hoping that your editor is going to do. The other thing you do when you get this, instead of an extra track, you're adding another version, a V layer. What you do is when you click on that, it automatically knows that it's a secondary and a primary, right? And that's kind of an added bonus, I think, for this workflow, or any workflow really. Is you just click in there and it changes that, instead of actually, you have to right click here and make that say it set as primary track or set as second. Total pain in the neck. Anyway, so there you go. That's all unlinked. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to the Conform tab. And because I have this extra long one here, I'm going to do a couple things. One is I'm going to limit the handles. And I know if you don't limit the handles when you do your sources sequence, you get everything. And if you've got a shot that's at one point of the timeline and the other's at the other point of the timeline, it'll take the entire one. But if you limit your handles, it'll take this plus whatever handles and this plus whatever handles, and you'll get two separate sources. And that's a great way, if you're using the same source but different parts of it, and it's an exceptionally long take, that you're getting two separate sources in your sources sequence. We used to get a lot of stuff from beauty clients, and what they would do is turn on the camera and then tell the models to dance. And they would leave the camera on until it got too hot. Then they would turn it off and say, save that, and we would get these 10-minute long clips. And it would be, really onerous to try to deal with it, because they would come in from the editor with these just, I get 50 shots from the same take. When that happens, it's really hard to deal with this type of workflow. And so what you want to do is definitely limit the handles. I'm putting it at 15 frames, and that'll make a sources sequence that's pretty reasonable for me. The other thing I do, which is new since I've been working with Jeff, is I save the sources. And the reason I save the sources is because it creates another reel that's called source reel. And it'll pull in the entire thing as a link. And what's great about that is that you'll be able to jump to it from your connected conform and check your sources with it. And sometimes you need to, but if you do and you don't have it, you have to go find it. And this is a way for the Flame just to bring it in and track it from within the interface. It's great stuff. So I save the sources and I limit the handles. And then I look at the search location, which is my ingest footage, right? And I'm scanning it, and I think it was the same place. Match criteria, I'm going to be strict about the file name, because I know that these are all coming from NASA, because everything they have is free, because you already paid for it. Okay, so it's found everything, and I'm going to create my sources sequence. Okay, oh, look what it did. So it included all the QuickTime references. Now, you can publish that if you're going to publish this whole thing, or you can get rid of it. What I like to do with this, because we now know how to hide this stuff, what I'll do is I'll take all this, put it on Ripple, and I'll just put it at the end of the sequence, and then I can hide segment. Okay, so we know that's not going to publish. So I've got all these shots here, right? Everything is, hunky-dory. Oh, there's the graphic in there that didn't come in. Okay, and I know that graphic, if I turn off Ripple and move in on this, and if I jump to shared sequence, I know that graphic is in the 15 and the 30, right? And I can see that it's also in the sources, right? So I can see that there's the graphic there. I know what I want to do is actually make a link with this. So I'm going to create a source segment connection with this. And I'm going to sync segments on connection. and I'm going to create. And that's the way to get one shot in there that links up, right? And so that's where I'm connected, but I'm not connecting absolutely everything, just what I need, because I'm going to publish the rest, and I'll get versioning on this through the rest of them. That will not change the timeline effects. That'll change the source when you do the publishes. Anyway, so there's this, and let's go back to the conform, and I'll link up the sources. Now it's going to ask you if you want to add, and that's because the sources are, it's pulling in two sources that are from the same, it's pulling in two clips from the same source, and it's going to add them both. And it's going to say that this source goes to, this segment goes to that source, and this segment goes to that source. It'll have its own unique source per segment. So we add that, and everything links up. And you can see, even though I limited handles, I'm still getting 3,283 frames on this shot and 981 frames on that shot, which is, in my mind, horrible, because you don't want to publish all that stuff, right? This is this one right here, and we know we're speeding that one up there. These two are both the same segment, the same source, but they're sped up enormously. That's the one that was 400%, and that's the one that was 600%. Anyway,
I
so
think the
what
saving
happened?
grace for the handle problem there is that limit handles button is really referring to the sources sequences handle. So when that sources sequence got generated, it was generated considering only 15 handles. And then when you go to publish, you can still limit the handles on publish. So there is a lot of handles in the timeline there, but you're not going to publish all those handles as long as you limit them when you publish it. So it should be fine.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's because you limit them on making your sources segment. When you go to the conform, this limit handles refers to the create sources sequence. It doesn't refer to when you link. And that's an important distinction. It's not going to pull in what it knows from that source. And so if we go to the timeline now, we have a sources reel, right? This is 15 clips, and you get all the sources. You can see these two are the same. And what's nice here is that you can, if you go to this, when you jump to the source, you can see that it gives you the sequences where the shot's used and the source. And that source is in that reel. And that's really, really nice for you to be able to do that from the sources sequence. Jeff and I were talking about this earlier when we were rehearsing. We don't use the shots sequence because there are some things in there that it does that are unexpected. But the way that initially this was thought of was that the sources sequence was a way for you to talk to what's outside of Flame. If you have material that comes from offline, like transcodes, and you're conforming that, it's a way for you to get your conform in. And then with the sources sequence, once you get your grade, you swap that into your sources sequence, and that becomes the new source for you if you need to do that before the publish. If you need to do that after the publish, you can swap it in and republish as another version or as another timeline and get those sources managed that way. And it's a way for you to get started working on your stuff prior to getting the grade. Or if there's a grade that's being worked on concurrently with all the Flame work, which happens often enough, it's a way for you to manage everything that's coming into Flame for the job meets all at the sources sequence. That's the way to think about the sources sequence. Is it's your starting point for work, and it's a really good thing to make. So there you go. That's the sources sequence here. And okay, so this is right. And now let's look at our 30. And all this stuff is there. Oh, that looks like a problem again. So let's copy that and we'll paste the action. Okay. And I can see that there's something happening in the background. So let's copy that and we'll paste the action. Okay, good. And that fixed the background there.
Such a great fix.
And this one definitely is too wide. So let's select this and copy that and paste the action. Good. And selecting this one and copy that and paste the action. Great. And that all lines up, and it looks more like a cylindrical capsule. Great. That's all good. Good. That's where it's supposed to be. That's the comp in the other one. And there's your graphic there, which we have a link here. So let's actually create a batch effects really quick with this. And I'll text and a comp and a back clip. And I will take the comp of the text and put it over the back clip. And I'll take the batch effects and put it there, and then the text goes into the graphic. And the text will be edit, and we'll put that there, and it's the moon, right? The moon. And this one's for Andy. Moon, and exit. Turn, okay. And that'll look like whatever over the back clip. Okay, so we exit the VFX. Oh, made a mistake here. So let's go editor, and the comp is a screen. Exit. Great. And then I'm going to take this now, this graphic, and I'm going to sync connected segments. Okay. And then that's my 30. Oh, look, the graphic in the 15 is correct now too. And in the sources sequence, it's there. So if I had something underneath, that would be good.
The crowd went wild for that one. The crowd loved it.
Yeah, it's a great way to like, oh, I've got the same thing needs to happen in both of those. That's really good. Okay, so this is all good, and this is prior to even getting published. So then we can take this right here, right? And I'm going to rename, going to rename the shots, okay? This will be my background segment. And now use this as my default, but I could use the segment token in this one because it's just one layer. But that'll be that. And you can see, actually, let's undo that. Another way that I've been used to it, so you see the shot name here. So I'm going to take all these, right? And I'm going to make the shot name the background segment. And that way I can modify all the shots directly from my spreadsheet. And that's another way to name your shots, is if you know your tokens, which is one of the things that I'm trying to commit to memory. I'll just add all my tokens in the shot name, and boom, that's how that comes up. Okay.
I guess I didn't know that. I didn't know you could name them there. That's good to know. I'm learning something.
Yeah, you can do all sorts of things in there. This thing is sweet. Yeah, in here, wow. So if you've got this selected, you can go in here with the names. Right. So let's say, well, actually, let's select all the ones with the MOV. Watch when you hit that, it says .mov. I want to get rid of where it says .mov. Right, and boom, all those are renamed. No MOV. It's really important because if you're doing something with that name and you got, you're sending it back out to somebody, it's MOV.mov if you're making QuickTime files for them. Total pain in the neck. But that's a quick way to like adjust all your shots. Anyway, it looks like we're all set on publishing. So why don't we go ahead and publish, and this will be my sources sequence. And this is something Jeff actually, I think, knows more than I. Can I rename this sources sequence?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no problem.
Okay. So let's call this sources sequence moon sources sequence moon cam. And MUN is actually from this game that Andy plays called the Kerbal Space Program. Anyway, so sources sequence, out we go. The reference files are hidden, so they're not going to publish. And then I know I've got that speed change in there. So this, I'm going to use the 60 frame recipe in there. The 60 frame will get me over the limit of like weirdness with handles and flame. Anyway, so that's
and I think it's also important to note that in this scenario here, in this part 2 to our demo, the implication is that this is a separate campaign that because technically what's about to happen is he's going to be overwriting some of his batch names from the first section. I think the idea is that this is a completely different scenario. So you would have either gone down the pathway of the first section or gone down the pathway of the second section here.
Yeah. Oh, this is actually going to go to a whole nother folder because in the recipe it says name to begin with. And the name pick
Ah,
is the name of the sequence that you've got. So it's not going to overwrite anything from the previous campaign. If you want to publish again, it's whatever comes from that timeline. And so that's why I add the name token there. Okay, so this is the recipe there and the clip options. And here's your video options, which is identical pretty much to what's before. And then the sequence options, I've just included more handles down here, 60 frames. Okay, we will export.
and we're publishing
And
everything?
publishing everything because that's what we're doing in this campaign.
That makes sense.
Um, Sometimes you don't publish everything, but that's what the previous campaign was to show.
True. I like it.
All right.
Michael Landon
And
confirmed that 60 frame handles. We're having a nice
yeah,
conversation with Jason Scott in the chat about coming back as a flame artist. But oh, looks like
yeah,
it published.
yeah, it published. Boom, bada boom. It's really kind of fast. So it's got all the shots here and the metadata. And the plates one is from that graphic, right? So that's just the way that gets handled because it's a generated file. Anyway, it makes the plates, and as soon as I can show you this from this one, it makes the plates. But as soon as you start rendering, it renders to a folder called comps. So that's a great way for you to tell the difference between what's a plate and what's your version in the comps. And there you go. And now, when we go to the 30 and the timeline, these files here. So what we do, the next thing and last thing we're going to do here is I'm going to take this sources sequence, okay? And I'm going to take all this here and I'm going to media, unlink, okay? Then I'm going to go and I'm going to go to my conform and I'm going to go to search location and I'm going to go to publish, metadata, open clips, scan, and match criteria.
Yeah, no longer is the file name correct.
No longer the file name, and then close and link the sources. And there you go. You see your 60 frame handles here. I can jump to my connected sequence here, and that's the EXR, no longer a movie. And that's from, if you look in here, I can't move the cursor, but it says shot 150. And the one above it is shot 160. These are my two shots. And so if I need to do work on any of these, or if I'm sending them out to anybody, they come back with this. There's my conform. The 15 and the 30. Go to the timeline, and there you have it.
And there you have it. The audience loves it yet again. That's the act of publishing for a multi-sequence campaign and bringing the open clips back in. Maybe quickly do a quick comp on one of them to change the color and bring it back.
Sure,
Since it's
sure.
already set up for that.
Oh
Might as
yeah.
well.
Well, actually, this is one of the sweet things that Jeff has written as a thing. If I go here, thank you for reminding me. Instead of create new version, open it as a batch group, and it's sucking the batch group from the disk. This batch group comes in as version 0. So if I add a color correct here, and
Nick
we're
Smith,
going
this is for you. This is what we were talking about earlier.
right, this is super red. We're going to render.
Version 1 is the red version.
Right. And then it's taking a second and it brings the file back in. Let's go to the timeline. Version 1 is red, just like that. And if I jump to shared source sequences, I go here to the 15. The 15 is also red. And that's the thing to understand is if you've published, when you right click on these and you change the version number, it changes the version number in all of these. So I don't have to manually go and change them. It's done. Okay.
And I think the
And that's
important
for all
distinction
my
is that,
15s. Go ahead.
sorry, what allowed this to work was not just the act of publishing. What allowed this to work was the act of publishing the open clips, and then the key was the unlinking part. He unlinked it in his sources sequence. The sources sequence is representative of all of the sequences. He unlinked it there and relinked it to the open clips, which are linked between the different batches and the versions and the sources and the sequences. And that's what allowed all of this to take place with the different versions. That's the key, I think, to take away.
Yeah, definitely. So Jeff has a great way. So because we don't save iterations, excuse me, and because we've got, let's say we have 10 artists and they're all working on these shots and we don't know which one is the latest one. Jeff has actually written his own script, opened the open clip as a batch group. And what it does is it picks the open clip up and drops it in. Let's say, let's take this one here. Let's open.
I think the way that it works is it looks to see if there is work done, and it opens the batch group. So if there isn't a batch group that's been created yet, then it won't pull it in, I think, is the idea.
Okay. I'm going to save this here just for the moment, and I'm going to delete this and open clip batches. And this is really useful because when you have, I'm using this correctly, right?
I think you can try clicking on the sequence instead of the shot.
The sequence. Okay, sure. The sources, and let's go batch group.
Uh-oh, looks like it's not working.
Well, what I've seen it do, which is amazing, is it takes all the latest batch groups in the entire sequence and it puts them all up on the desktop. And that's a great way if you've got a multiple of artists and somebody left early and didn't save their batch groups in the shared library, or if somebody moves stuff around and you don't know which one is which and where it's all supposed to be. You just right click on your sequence and it pulls it all together for you, which is super sweet. It's really, really nice. So that's the latest thing that was getting worked on.
We'll have to investigate it in the patrons chat and see what's going on there and showcase it then. But This is great. This is amazing. This is the advancement of the publishing workflow that you've grown to know and love and demonstrate. Was there anything else that you wanted to show before we head on off into the sunset?
I think we're good. I think, in the patron chat we should talk about time warps, because those can be a massive pain in the neck and absolutely stuff up your publishes. But there's maybe that's 3.0 for the publishing workflow.
Yeah, and obviously we've gone a little bit over here, but I think one of the big takeaways that Josh and I discovered while we were going over this is that this is such a deep subject that, we can probably do 3 or 4 more episodes on this very subject, because there's just so much to cover, so many variables that pop up on day-to-day jobs. Thank you so much for explaining it today here and doing a great job showing the workflow. I appreciate it.
Thanks, much appreciate it.
So thank you very much. I'm gonna head on over to the closing slideshow here to thank the sponsors and do some announcements. But Josh is going to meet us over at the patrons chat after the show here in a couple minutes. Thank you very much, Josh. Let's head on over to our slideshow. And a little bit of black. Wait a minute. I'm forgetting something. It's not slideshow time. It's actually prize time. Oh my God, I almost forgot prize time. What have I done? It's been too long. It's time to give away some prizes here. It's cold. It's not that cold, but 43 degrees. I'm going to give away a Logik beanie, and I'm going to give away a Logik mug that you can put your coffee in, and then we're going to give away 1 year of Boris FX Optics. So I have here a wheel of names for all the people who have signed up for this show here, and I'm going to give it a shuffle, and I'm going to give it a spin. And our first winner of a Logik beanie is none other than Mark Wellington, a household name in the Logik community. Mark, congratulations. You're the new owner of a beanie. Mark. Okay, let's see who's winning a mug. Winner number 2. The winner of a mug is none other than Tim Farrell, another household name in the Logik world. Congratulations, Tim. You're the proud new owner of a mug. This is lovely. We have one more prize to give away. It is 1 year of Boris FX optics. Oh, geez, the music finished. I took too long. The winner is Brian Conlon. 1 year of Boris FX optics. Congratulations, Brian Conlon. We did it. Okay, thank you. Now we're going to head on over to the slideshow. Coming up on Logik Live, we have one scheduled show coming up soon. Amanda is back in the hot seat talking to flame artist Mark Leroux on Sunday, February 12th, next week, 2 p.m. So before you tune into the Super Bowl and enjoy some junk food and amazing commercials and sports, come on down to Logik Live and hang out for a nice show interviewing flame artist Mark Leroux. If you haven't already signed up with the forum, please head on over and do so at forum.logik.tv. Daily conversations, question answering, general stuff related to Flame. While you're there, why don't you sign up and head on over to Logik Discord, where we're having some more informal chats and informal hangouts. This episode of Logik Live will be available on the website later on today. And speaking of Mark Leroux, check out the latest podcast, number 33, talking with next week's guest, Mark Leroux, for a sneak peek at what he's going to talk about there. You can find that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher. We have reached 1,600 subscribers, specifically 1,670. Just keeps growing. That's the goal. But if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. It does help grow the channel. If you'd like to support what we're doing here on Logik, please consider becoming a patron by signing up at patreon.com/LogikTV. Congratulations to the proud new owners of some Logik merch here on the show today. Be sure to check out the Logik merch store to pick up your own Logik merch if you weren't a lucky winner. Big thanks to Boris FX sponsoring Logik Live. If you'd like to save 15% on everything they make, you can use the code Logik-2022 discount at checkout. A thank you to AJA for also sponsoring Logik Live. They've been together with Flame since 2006. And a final thank you to Hotspring. They are the future of VFX outsourcing, connecting you to other artists from around the world to help you get your projects done. You can find them at thehotspring.com. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Josh for coming. Where is my music? Where is it? There it is. Thanks for coming, Josh. I think hopefully everyone got something out of the publishing workflow here. We're going to head on over to the patrons chat to continue the conversation, a little Q&A. We're going to dig deeper, talk about some time warps, talk about my Python script that fell on its face a little bit. We'll see if we can figure that one out. Thank you so much for coming, everyone in the chat. We'll see the patrons over there. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Until next time, thank you. Goodbye.